This is the Allison in Wonderland Mental Health Podcast with your host, Allison Fry.
This is the place that looks through the looking glass and falls down the rabbit hole while discussing mental health.
Join this journey that isn't just about putting mental health into a box that is only about anxiety, depression, or other common topics.
Allison in Wonderland is about everything that is in that box, as well as all of the things that don't quite fit into a box.
Here is your host, mental health advocate, Allison Fry.
Hello, everybody. I am Allison, the host of the Allison in Wonderland Mental Health Podcast. I do want to remind everyone that I am not a doctor. I'm a mental health advocate, and I just love talking about mental health. If you are in a state of crisis, please call 911 or go to your nearest emergency room. Also, the Suicide Lifeline has rolled out their 988 three-digit code that you can dial or text to get immediate assistance. I would like to introduce you all to our very special guest, Bob Hutchins. Bob, would you like to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Hey, thank you, Allison. I'm really glad to be here. Yeah, so I've been in the tech space world now for about 20 years, doing digital marketing, digital strategy. I ran my own agency for about 15, 16 years. The last few years I've been consulting. I took a career shift, Allison, about 2 or 3 years ago and went back and got my master's degree in behavioral and organizational psychology. And the intersection of technology, communication, psychology, human flourishing, that's kind of the pool that I like to swim in. And I've always kind of swam there in my marketing and digital strategy with clients, but I've more formalized that and have gone deeper into that lately. So it's really interesting to see how the human element in a world that is quickly and always telling us that technology can solve our problems, how we seem to always come back to the human side, whether it's to fix it, whether it's to acknowledge the problems that media and technology may cause or uncover, or really to just connect with people, because at the end of the day, we connect with humans, not machines. And so that intersection to me is really fascinating.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's why your message just speaks to me so much, because I also come from the digital marketing side, but then my education and my passion are all with mental health. So it's like, how do these two worlds converge? And, how do I use my passions, but also use this crazy nerdy digital marketing skill set that I have? So I think that's why I love your message. I'm really excited about your book, Our Digital Soul. I think I passed some of the tests in it when going through it. Why don't we talk about that a little bit? Because I think that I am the anomaly when it comes to being on your phone. Like when I'm on mine, I share my memories on Facebook of my kids when they were itty bitty. I don't usually read people's feeds. And then I play puzzle games because I'm convinced that it'll keep me from getting Alzheimer's if I play puzzle games every night. And it helps me turn my brain off when I'm just trying to relax. Yes. So I am definitely the exception, not the rule, when it comes to being on our phones and engaging in social media and things like that. I love the idea of the digital soul and kind of how those things affect our lives. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I would love to talk about it. So the title of our latest book is called Our Digital Soul. And I co-wrote it with a friend of mine who is a licensed marriage and family therapist. Her name is Jenny Black, and we both live here in Nashville. She's a friend of mine, and we had a conversation a few years ago, Allison, that really was the genesis of this book. And I had been thinking and pondering a lot of the concepts, and of course, my experience, as I'm sure you have seen over the past 20 years, digital marketing, the internet, social media, all these things have kind of risen and come and go. And, from the MySpace days to the Facebook days to currently the fall of Facebook, All of that has been fascinating from not only a business perspective in my career and how I use all these things, whether it be email, whether it be content strategies, to really engage clients and their customers and supporters, whatever it may be, to engage with their message. And what I observed both in my work, but also I began to see in myself, my kids, my family, was this merging of our minds, our worlds, etc. And the conversation with Jenny, we started talking about these things, and we're kind of coming from unique perspectives, right? So I'm coming from the kind of pro tech career. This is my livelihood perspective. And then she's coming at it from a therapist. And she made a statement that really put us on this track. She said, Bob, in my career, it used to be that when people came in, whether it was families or couples or individuals or kids, and I was working with them in a therapeutic setting, it used to be that screen life and cell phones specifically were a problem periodically. And she's like, that's no longer the case. She said, now it is the number one problem in my therapy office. It is the problem. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, without a doubt, almost 100% of the people who come through, they bring up their, whether it's online affairs that happen, whether it's a child that has high anxiety and suicidal ideation, they are on their phone and on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, whether it's grandma whose personality has changed and all she does is stare at her iPhone and Fox News all day, right? So you've got this extreme of things going on that she said it all centers around the screen life. And so as we continued those conversations, we decided to write a book, and two different people coming from two different perspectives, kind of saying the same thing, but offering a view of it and a context that's kind of unique. And so hopefully it's not an anti-tech book, but it can feel like that, especially in the first half of the book, because there's some very real studies, there's some very real effects and affects of digital life on our physiology, on our nervous systems, on the way that we are viewing the world, the way that we're viewing each other. And so the subtitle of our book, it's called Our Digital Soul: Collective Anxiety, Media Trauma, and a Path Toward Recovery. So that's the high level of the book and how we got there.
I know when I was in college that sociology, my classes did not have anything to do with online. And now that's basically like, that is sociology, is everything's online. And for anyone that follows my blog, I do have a post. I think the first post is called Social Media Suicide. And it discusses the loss of my brother and how he turned his MySpace page into one very elaborate suicide note. And that was in 2007. So the differences in social media in 2007 to today are still, I mean, it's drastically different. And then we do have the issues with cyberbullying and all of those things. And I was thinking, oh, I passed the test, I wasn't this, but I did think back, and I've had two instances where I took the bait on Facebook, and I ended up in a nasty fight. And I remember reading it back going, why in the world did I type all of this stuff up? And I guess twice is, impressive considering, but I do remember them, and then just kind of constantly refreshing to see if they replied, and sending screenshots to my sister. Can you believe she said this to me? And stuff like that. So, I mean, for people that are very ingrained in their social media, if for someone like me that's not very ingrained in their social media to go through that unraveling. I mean, I remember showing the screenshots to my therapist in therapy after one of these fights, and just imagining me going through that. I can't imagine what people that are in it as just like their main thing they do throughout the day, and how that would affect their mental health, because it was very stressful for my mental health, and I am not on social media that much. I just took the bait.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because um, eh, that kind of leads us to the title of the book, Our Digital Soul. And what you talked about there is really interesting because for you, you seem to be able to delineate or at least catch yourself and say, oh my gosh, I took the bait. I entered in to something that now, when I look back, almost like there's a term in psychology called metacognition, and it means that you're observing your thoughts. So you're thinking about your thoughts. That's why it's called meta. Um, and that's a real form of self-awareness. And so when you're able to catch yourself like that, that is a real healthy perspective. The problem is, and getting to the title of the book, is we've become so merged with this world that we really do create a disembodied version of ourselves. So when you were online and going into that space where you were arguing with that person, you were still you, but you were disembodied to a certain degree. There's a psychologist that back in the early 2000s was writing about this. He was talking, his name is Suller, is his last name, Dr. Suller. And he wrote, and we talk about it in our book, he talks about something called the online disinhibition effect. And it simply means is that we become disinhibited when we go online. In other words, we kind of act like, have you ever seen that movie, The Invisible Man?
Yes.
Um, we become the invisible man online, right? We become people. They don't really see me. They don't really know me. They don't really like, I'm not there facing them. I can do whatever I want, even if it's out of character, or even what I might be subconsciously really wanting to say in real life, but because of my own morals or ethics or whatever it might be, I don't say it. And this online disinhibition effect causes us to, again, to be disembodied and enter into another world that we become somebody different. And like you said, imagine, and unfortunately, this is where many of us live. Imagine doing that 5, 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day continually, because all you have to do is look at your screen time. And we become a person that we do have a digital soul. It is the number one companion. It is our biggest relationship today, is our screens. It's our number one relationship. We spend more time with our screens, touching our screens, beside our screens, than we do almost any relationship that we have. So it really is, it does become a soul. It becomes that deeper part of us. It becomes that ethereal part of us. It becomes that thinking and feeling and communicating part of us that we engage in on those platforms.
Yeah, it's interesting kind of like when you think about people that are very non-confrontational, like they're going to shy away from confrontation when they're talking to you. They're just going to kind of be timid, but then when they get online, they feel like, okay, I've got this voice, and then it goes too far. So
Mm,
I can definitely see how the nature of your soul, where you're interacting in real life, and then your digital soul being very different. And even now that everyone's gone digital and everyone's gone remote, we then have it's not just, oh, when I'm on social media, it's that now everything's virtual. I mean,
that's right.
it's definitely one of those things that, um, I mean, I think it's very relevant. And I think it's one of those things that if people could take a step back and say, okay, I don't have to close down my Facebook page, but these need to be kind of my personal rules.
Right.
Almost how when I first let my children have social media.
Right.
They had rules that were specific to their social media. And so it's like we all need rules for our social media. We all need to have those, and if we need to have a sticky note, well, I guess most people are on their phones, not their computers like I am with all my sticky notes everywhere, but really just having those guidelines. And I know y'all kind of touch on
Mhm.
how to rein it in and what the best steps are to kind of checking yourself before you wreck yourself.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I, I, the purpose of the book, and I want to answer your question, but I think a good way to get there is to let people know that it's not about whether social media is good or bad. It's not about how the internet has changed the world for the better or for the worse, depending on your experience. Um, we really want people to understand and hear that this is not about being pro digital media, anti digital media. It's all about being pro human, because all media is an extension of ourself. I'm gonna talk like Marshall McLuhan here, who talked a lot about it, but he was a media theorist back in the 60s, 70s. He was way ahead of his time, but he was talking about all media, all technology is an extension of human beings, and that we cannot, under any circumstances, fall into the belief that technology is just a tool. That's the biggest number that you will hear, and I've probably said it some point in my life. But all media, all technology, and I put media and technology kind of in the same boat, because if you go back and look at historically, whether it's the invention of the wheel, fire, television, radio, these are all extensions. For instance, the wheel is the extension of the foot, right? Like
Right.
you can't say that it's just a tool, because it affected our societies, it affected our physiology. Walking 10 miles a day is a very different human being than somebody who gets in their car and sits in traffic for 2 hours a day and drives around and doesn't really walk. That is a different human being. It's also changes our societies. It's what births the suburbs and our highway systems. You can say the same thing about the written technology and the printing press, how it changed our brains and our memories, and, for good, i.e., we had access to the world's information, and it spawned the Renaissance. But also, I bet people before books had much bigger memory abilities, right? Because they had to memorize and remember so many different things. So technology changes us. As we change technology, it changes us. So to get to your point of what we're trying to say in this book is that first you need to acknowledge that this technology has changed our world. And so what Marshall McLuhan also said, he said the medium is the message. We think that those messages, those arguments, those discussions, those business functionality that we have on these platforms, whether it's Zoom or um, email or whatever, Facebook, it's not about the messages. 100 years from now, no one's going to remember anything about what was said, what arguments were taking place. They're going to say, just like every other technology, the wheel changed society. The printing press changed society. The internet changed society. iPhones changed society. Social media changed us. The medium itself is the message. It is much bigger than the individual messages themselves. And so I think, to get to your point, answer your question, how do we, what tools, what guidelines, what checks do we put in place? I think we first have to acknowledge that we are changed by our technology, and that its effects on us are more than just, hey, stop spending so much time on your iPhone, it's more of you have high levels of anxiety. You don't know why you're angry all the time. You don't know why you can't pay attention. Maybe this technology is changing you. Maybe it's changing our brains. Maybe it's changing our attention spans. And so when we can get to that point and start to educate ourselves, then we can say, you know what? The good news is the brain is very malleable. It's plastic, and we can change, and we can go. It doesn't permanently change us. It doesn't have to. We can get out of that. And so the first step is just acknowledging it and looking at the bigger picture, because I think you can't change unless you're willing to acknowledge what the problem is. It's like an addiction recovery, right? Just stop smoking or just stop taking drugs. Just, put some walls around yourself and don't go to the store and buy it, or don't talk to your drug dealer. And that's all you need to do. No, you need to acknowledge, I've got a problem. I'm an addict. I need to surround myself with people who can really help me. And I need to have some really strong boundaries around that. I think it's the same thing with technology. I'm not saying that everyone is addicted, although we could have that argument. I would say that you have to acknowledge the severity of it and the effects that it's having, not just on you, but on the people around you, because there are vicarious effects that we can talk about or not talk about, but it doesn't just affect you, it affects your loved ones and those around you as well.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about the addiction. They, when it's alcohol and drugs, it's very much just stop. If you have an eating disorder and your addiction surrounds food, you cannot take food away.
Right.
So it's a whole different process. So it definitely reminds me more of that type of addiction where it's like, okay, I have an addiction to eating or to binging or to purging and all of these things, but I do still have to eat. It's still part of our lives where we still have to
That's
work
right.
and make a living. So it's definitely, it almost seems like it's that type of addiction recovery where you're learning better tools to, have a better relationship with food, but you're also, in this case, it would be have a better relationship with the technology.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Well, I will say this. In addiction recovery, one of the definitions to know if you are addicted or not is they tell you, what is the first thing that you think about and comes to mind when you open your eyes in the morning you wake up. uh, for many of us, we roll over and we check our phone. um, it's something to think about when you really think about, like, what is it that you really think about most, and what gives you the most anxiety if you don't have it. Think about going in today's world, most people leaving the house for 4 hours and forgetting their phone. It's akin to an addict not having their fix, right?
Yeah.
So, you can take that for what it's worth. And I agree with you 100%. I am very pro technology. It's my life. It's my career. It's what I help people with. And so it's not an either or thing. It is a let's do better. Let's acknowledge what's going on. Let's have some self-awareness and metacognition, and observe what's really going on. And then let's in the short term use the tools that's out there to set some boundaries around ourselves, to not allow phones at any type of dinner table, to turn them off at a certain time at night, to put them in the other room when we go to bed, to not allow our kids to have it upstairs in their room past a certain hour. These are all just common sense things that any of us can do. And I will say this, I know you're a parent, I'm a parent. Kids do not need cell phones to function and develop properly. They just don't. So I know you think they do. I know parents feel guilty when their kid goes, but that's how I connect with people socially. Maybe, but they will be fine. And so I encourage parents to wait as long as you can before you get your kids cell phones.
Yeah, my children are all grown, but the first cell phones we got were really just very basic ones that had GPS tracking and an ability to call us that hit what was hidden in their phone. Because I was super paranoid about them riding the school bus to school instead of me driving them. So it was basically like a LoJack. We just tracked them. But
Yeah, well, that's a great usage of the technology for sure.
yeah, and ironically, as my 19-year-old, who is my youngest, he does not use social media as much as other people. He doesn't keep games on his phone. Um, and he's like I am, where when I'm on Instagram, Instagram's got me pegged. I scroll through and it's showing me mental health posts and cat videos. And if anyone's seen the cat walking around, that's what Instagram shows me. And his shows him music and art. So those are the things that we'll send each other in Instagram. But just completely disconnected on social media for what you would expect a 19-year-old to be. And especially
Sure.
me for what you would expect a digital marketer to be. I understand social media as a business need. And then, I mean, it is nice to be able to connect with family members from around the world and things, as long as you can do that in a healthy way.
That's right. It's just like anything in life, right? Um, I always say this quote. It's E.O. Wilson. He was a famous biologist that died a year or two ago. And one of his famous, he said a lot of great things, but one that I kind of have plastered everywhere is the problem with humanity is we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. And I think what has happened over the past 20 years with the internet and social media is we've created this system that has far surpassed in many ways the ability of our brains, which haven't changed a whole lot in a few thousand years, as far as the emotional, psychological response systems that are there. And we can't process that. So when you're constantly bombarded with the dopamine hits of people, especially kids, we starting to see the effects. Imagine going down the street when you and I were growing up, and every other person said, "Allison, you look beautiful today. Allison, you look beautiful today. Allison, you are so hot. Allison, that's amazing."
That was not my childhood.
But imagine that,
Yeah.
how weird that would be, right? And imagine how unhealthy a child would be if that was the expectation or what they sought after or what they experienced on a daily, hourly basis, right?
Well, and the
Our
reverse of
brains,
that too. You walk down the
exactly,
street and it's like, you're such a nerd, you're not popular. Why are you so like
exactly.
it's no, or you're just completely ignored, which,
A person telling you what they're going to do and who they're going to do it with and how you're not included. That would be not only a weird but a highly unhealthy environment, right? But that's what we do every day. Adults, kids, all ages. We're constantly looking for that, and we're getting it. And our brains are not designed in any way to really cope with that. Another thing you could say is that we are all at the center of every traumatic and dramatic event at all times. So again, we're not designed to deal with that. So just because something is happening in the world doesn't mean you have to experience it over and over from every angle possible. Um, we were this is a new thing for humanity. So I think as we continue to realize these things and unpack them, I'm hopeful that the next generation that's coming will design much more human-centric technology, code, tools, etc. So this past 20 years has been an experiment that has been life changing in so many good ways. And I love technology and I love the ability that it's changed so many people's lives in so many positive ways. But also, we have to be honest about our mental health as well.
Yeah, I do think that one positive about mental health, and it's really only been since COVID, is that telehealth has become more commonplace. Insurance companies will
Absolutely.
pay for it. And so access to mental health professionals is more readily there. I have noticed that some of them have completely gone to telehealth. So if you want to see someone in person, it's not always going to work, and that's upsetting. But being very ingrained in the bad that's going on, I I know it sounds bad, but I am sometimes the least informed person in the world. When after 9/11, I went home from work and I watched TV all night for months. And
Mm,
finally, because it was just constantly playing. And every day that it was first like front page news, I was buying the newspapers and I saved them for when the kids were grown. And finally I was like, I am just a miserable person. And I
mm,
stopped watching the news. And so my husband and I have different political affiliations, but if some kind of we kind of we kind of both went very drastically in different ways as we got older. We've been married for 21 years, so um, but he'll tell me if there's something an important world event that's happened, and I will
mhm.
go research it on my own through my own channels and multiple channels, but I do not pull up the news. And I'll be like, why are the flags at half mast? Because I won't know. So I and I can very closely tie it to how very depressed I was after 9/11
Well,
and
that's again,
constant media coverage.
that's really wise on your part. There was was done back in, I believe, 2014, and it was. Do you remember? Hopefully, you learned about this. Do you remember the Boston Marathon bombing event? Do you remember
I
that?
do. Do you know what sticks out the most to me about that event?
What's
The
that?
the girl that went as a victim for Halloween and became so bullied that she was actually getting death threats for it
Mm,
because it
mm,
it exploded through social media. It's terrible that that is the thing that sticks out in my mind. I remember her parents saying people are calling saying they're going to rape her to death and things like
mm.
that. And
Horrible.
and because on social media she posted that as a picture. Sorry, I derailed it, but that it's the
No,
first thing that pops into my mind about that every time, which is terrible. It's terrible that that girl making a poor costume decision and then the horrible ramifications after that are what pop into my mind rather than the actual bombing.
yeah. Well, along those lines, there was actual study done just a few months after, and it was for me one of the catalysts for our book as well, because it still kind of haunts me today, and I talk about it a lot. The study took about 2,700, I believe, people, and it compared it split the group in half. Half of them were people who were present at the event itself. So around 1,000, 1,200 people that were at the Boston bombing event. And the other half were people who consumed media around it shortly after. And what they wanted to measure was the stress and traumatic effects on each. What they found was that the people who viewed it online were more traumatically affected and psychologically affected than the people who were there present who witnessed it. And the logic behind that, it's very counterintuitive, but it really makes a lot of sense, because the logic is when you're physically present, not disembodied, but actually present at an event, and that happens, our brains kick in and they direct our bodies to do several things. The parasympathetic nervous system, and you'll either run away and scream, you'll go hide under a table. Maybe you pull out your phone and call 911 because people are hurt. Maybe you'll run and try to help the people that are injured and try to, comfort them. Whatever it may be, physiologically, you're going to react to that situation because that's how our bodies are wired to react to stressful situations. However, when we're online and our brains take in the same information and it multiple times relive it from many different angles, our brains are going, okay, body, physiological being, react. But instead we go, oh, that's horrible, swipe. Oh, that's horrible, swipe. And these compounded effects over and over, where our bodies are never get a chance to release the stress and the anxiety and the, I would argue, trauma, compound itself over time. So that's what you were feeling when you sat there and consumed all of that 9/11. And this can happen by watching news. It can happen by being on your phone. It's just what our bodies want to do. It's why when you see an animal, Allison, on these documentaries in Africa, after they get chased by a lion and get away, you'll see the gazelle go hide under a tree and it will shake for a while. Sometimes it'll lay down and move its legs like it's running in place. And then it gets up and it goes away and it's fine. It is that mammalian tendency to work out that stress and anxiety and trauma that it just experienced. And we're no different.
It makes total sense. Absolutely. I also, in 2019, I went with my son's choir group to New York so that they could sing in Carnegie Hall. And one of their stops on their field trip was the 9/11 Museum. And most of the chaperones would not go to the bottom part of the museum. It's a lot more to take in. And so I went down there with kids that were not alive at the time, and they're listening to these voicemail messages that are playing around them, and they're crying. And it was it reminded me again of like how I had felt like sitting there, like not part of it, but then to the point that this is a whole different generation of people, and they're crying. And then it's, and I kind of think back to Pearl Harbor, and I'm like, imagine if we had voice recordings of people that were going through Pearl Harbor. Would we be standing in that museum crying? And it's just that, like, that is this historical event that happened before my lifetime that I know about, and it was terrible and it led to all of these things. But 9/11 is a historical event to my son and his generation, but they can feel and hear and be a part of the moment. So it's a trauma to them in those moments.
Yeah,
And
it is.
the whole point, like the terrorism, like that they feel terror, that's why. So it's, and
So
sadness.
imagine an algorithm, Allison, that is designed to get your attention and long-term engagement, because that's how they make money, i.e. selling your attention to advertisers, that is designed to get you engaged on those topics. So for instance, you go down the rabbit hole, like you said, you get cat videos, and your son gets music videos. But what about when you happen to click on a video about terrorism or some political ideology, and all of a sudden that algorithm keeps feeding you that information or that stressful, engaging content. And you wake up one day and you're mentally unhealthy, you have high anxiety, suicidal. It's not a stretch to say that's what happens to us. And that's really what we're trying to say with our book, is that our digital souls enter in these places, and we can choose and be observant of how we engage. But make no mistake, the technology, this godlike technology, like E.O. Wilson says, is not syncing with our Paleolithic emotions at this point. And so we have to step in, like you have done, and provide those guardrails and that awareness.
Yeah, I mean, it's so relevant, and it's just such an amazing concept just to step back and be like, how is this really affecting like the whole world? Because I am just like the queen of self analysis, and but that also means I'm a stress ball because I'm constantly like analyzing,
Overthinking. Yeah,
I'm overthinking everything. But
I get it.
so I wouldn't wish that on anyone, but that does give me the ability to step back and be like, whoa, what's going on here? And so that helps, but then it's a trade-off for my constant self-analysis. Um, but then I'm also a digital marketer. And so I'm the
Yeah,
one sitting there trying to do the algorithms that grab people to pull into things and convert. Now I'm not trying to do it for news websites. I like do not work for anyone that I can't get behind what they do, because I can't, I don't want to not live with myself
sure.
because of that. But I'm also a digital marketer in the sense that I know better than to click on those things in Instagram, because I
Yeah,
know it's going to mess up my feed. So I'm very mindful of that. And that's just, and I know that's me, but you're right. Somebody clicks on one thing and then their entire feed changes.
that's
And
right.
I mean, I clicked on one of the meal plan advertisements one time, and it has taken me forever to have Dinnerly and all of those stop showing up as my advertisements.
Yeah, I always think it would be a fun exercise for everyone to switch phones for a day and see what other people's feeds and phone online experience looks like, because we get so myopic and think that, and this is the other effect of digital life today, is like we spend so much time in these alternative universes that we believe this is what the world is like, right? And so if I was to spend a day with your phone and you're with mine, you would say, wait a second, this is not what my Amazon feed looks like. And this is not what the news is feeding me. And this is not what my social media looks. You understand what I'm saying? Is we all
Yeah.
are in our own customized little world. And then therefore we make judgments about people, places, and things based on our own customized feeds. And that's what we have to take a step back and go, I'm going to lay this down for a few days, get out into the real world and see that, oh, that's not the way it is. Oh, my neighbor isn't this evil liberal or this evil conservative that hates our country
Oh,
and
look,
wants to
there's
kill
middle
children.
ground.
Yeah, we have more in common than we do differences. And but see, in a binary world, which that's what the digital world is, it's ones and zeros, right? We haven't gotten to the point where nuance can be communicated effectively. I believe and I have hope that one day we will be able to. But up until this point, it's either a yes or no, a good or bad, or a beautiful or an ugly. It's very little in between.
Right, exactly. I mean, absolutely. And it's interesting, about a month ago, we logged into my husband's Netflix profile to watch something, and I looked at it and I was like, it doesn't recommend it. Like, it had things I didn't. It was all this stand-up comedy and all of these things, and I was like, wow, this is not what it's saying. New releases are it's so different from mine. Mine's probably not super healthy, where it's all true crime and stuff like that. But
Yeah, exactly.
it is so different when we logged into his, and I just assumed Netflix was promoting the things they wanted you to watch, and that's why it was saying recommended for you. I was just assuming that. And then we hop in his and I'm like, wow, this is like, I didn't know this was on Netflix, and how did you get it to show this stuff up for you?
Exactly. One of the other illustrations that I use in the book is, and I talk about that the internet is a symbiotic nervous system, and we all contribute micro neurons to it, just like our brains is communicating through neurons. And this as a digital marketer, talking about algorithms, but when Allison goes on Google and she types in a search phrase, Google learns a little bit about that search phrase and that information from your search, and you contribute a micro neuron to the symbiotic nervous system, right? So when I come behind Allison an hour later or a day later and I search the same thing, I'm basically traveling in that same groove, i.e., that neuron that you contributed before. And we're all symbiotically building, this symbiotic nervous system. And it's the same thing on any other social platform. So it's interesting, in my opinion, when we all are feeling similar things, especially through the pandemic, and even now after that we're coming out of it, we're still struggling I hear people all the time talking about brain fog and nightmares and not being able to sleep and feeling exhausted all the time, and on it goes. I wonder if, there's many reasons. And like you said at the beginning of the show, I'm not a doctor, neither are you, but I wonder if this doesn't have something to do with this symbiotic nervous system, that this anxiety that is palpable, is partly because of this constant connection that we have, and all sharing these things back and forth, to where it's almost like one big organism that we're part of and contributing to. So I know that's a little bit meta and a bigger conversation, but that's something else, something to consider, that when we plug in, we're plugging in not just to information, but we're plugging into feelings, good and bad.
Yeah, absolutely. I think back to the first time that I got that AOL disk for my free internet hours, and
Sure.
and then I kind of think about how everything's evolved so much since then. And I know there will be people that are listening that they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
And I was super proud of my clear green Motorola pager when I was a teenager, and then that AOL disk that you couldn't pick up the phone when you were on it. But I can't imagine that anyone ever thought that it would end up being so, like, this whole part of us. We don't go to libraries to study for research papers. We go online. All of these things, and that wasn't the case. When I was growing up, we had that little computer in the corner that played Oregon Trail. That was that's the extent of it. So it's interesting how it's so intertwined in our lives, and I think that a lot has changed faster than you would think during the pandemic.
Yes.
So we've had this growth since my AOL disk that kind of had this obviously more than what anyone ever imagined, but a lot of growth. And then during the pandemic, it just exploded, like 10 years worth of it all at once. And an entire world that's stressed out and grieving and going through all this stuff. And that is stressful. I mean, I have a hard time turning my brain off from my things at the end of the night. I can't imagine trying to shut down with everybody's stuff that I've read for all day long, that this person's got this going on and this is going on. I would never sleep, never.
There's something in psychology called mirror neurons, and it is a study that they've kind of discovered them in the past 20-25 years. But basically, when you take an EEG of people's brains, they have shown and proven that we can mirror not only the understanding and the emotions, but actually intentions behind them. So it's a simple illustration would be, you're walking on your morning walk on a beautiful day by yourself. You come up upon somebody and they look at you you're thinking about something else, your day, what you're going to do, and they stop, look at you and smile and go, it's really nice to see you. It's a beautiful day, isn't it? And you, for that few seconds, and they keep walking. For that few seconds, you smile. You also are appreciative for the beautiful day. You might look up and you mirror exactly what they said to you. Same thing when you see a child smiling at sitting next to you, a baby looks up and laughs or giggles, and you just become joyful and giggly, and you say, oh my gosh, what a cute little baby. That's mirror neurons. And so I think we mirror what we see around us. We catch feelings and vibes. It's the old saying, be the change you want to see in the world. There's actually science behind that. It's not just a cute little saying, but you're around negative people, you're going to be negative. You're around happy people, you're going to be happy. You get a room full of people laughing.
Argumentative people, like
Yeah.
absolutely.
So being plugged into that all day, I think we're kidding ourselves if we think it's not going to affect us for better or for worse.
Yeah. It's funny. That reminds me, I'm kind of the baby whisperer. I'll be in the grocery store and I swear I'm not trying to kidnap kids, but they jump out of their mom's arms trying to come to me.
You're right.
My husband
My
made a
wife's the same
comment.
way.
Yeah, my husband made a comment like a week or so ago about how uh, I smile different when I see babies than any other time. Like it's the biggest smile that you ever see. And then the next day, we were in the elevator with a baby, and it's just like I'm smiling, the baby's smiling, everybody's smiling. It's just like this super happy moment, and I'm like, I know my kids are too young now, but I'm gonna be the best grandma. It's just like
Yeah, you will. You will for sure. And that experience in the elevator is like a microcosm of what we need to be aware of our digital souls when we enter into it. Is we're going to pick up that energy. And so again, I go back to when people go, oh, Bob, you're overthinking it. It's just a tool, just like anything else. No, I think you're underthinking that, because yes, it is a valuable tool that we can use, but when it affects you physiologically, it goes beyond just being a tool.
Yeah, when you think about it, that baby directly hasn't developed a digital soul, maybe indirectly from mom and dad's, moods, but it's the most natural, innocent smile you're going to get back because it hasn't been affected by all of this technology. So,
Yeah, and if you don't mind, well, we got a little time. I'd love
oh
to
yeah,
talk about the vicarious effects,
yes,
because
absolutely.
because the baby is a great segue. There was a study back in the 70s, and it was called the still face experiment. And the still face experiment, you can actually see it on YouTube. There's videos of it. It's probably 73, 74. And it's kind of disturbing in some ways to watch. But the study was, they took moms with young babies that were maybe 8, 9, 10 months old, like toddlers, couldn't quite walk, but were in baby chairs. And they were looking at their child. The baby was looking back. They were cooing and awing and, you know, being a healthy, engaged mom. And they would then ask the moms to look away for a second and then look back with a very blank stare as they look at the child. And they said, do not change that, whatever the baby does. What they were trying to measure was, what is the emotional and psychological effects of the human face and interaction with the child? And of course, we know what the results were. Is the baby would first look a little confused. Then it would start to want to get the mother's attention to respond in another way besides just a blank stare. And for some, they would cry. For some, they would act out to try to get the attention. For some, they would self-soothe by, sucking on a finger or a thumb or a hand. And the results of the experiment was that the psychological development and growth of the human is greatly affected by human interaction. And we know this from orphans from other countries, that it's not just psychological development, but actually our brains develop because of it. And so, as you think about the still face experiment, what are we doing to our kids when they're in our presence and we're on our cell phones, on our screens for hours at a time? We're creating and living out still face experiments all day long. And to me, and again, I'm going to show my age, or I'm going to sound like the old guy here. I think it's sad. And I think the solution is, will we give them their own screens? And so I see parents in restaurants or out in public on their phone while the baby is sitting in the carriage or the high chair with their own baby iPad. And you just have to wonder, what is the psychological development and the emotional development of this experiment that we're engaging in? So again, I'll get off my soapbox, but you brought up the baby thing. That definitely is how the vicarious results of our own engagement and lack of boundaries can affect those around us.
Yeah, and if you even kind of think about the evolution of the family unit, you my grandfather's generation, their fathers weren't super in touch with their feelings, and I'm very overgeneralizing. I'm not saying everyone was this way, but
Sure.
kind of like, and then you've got these households where women go to work and dads are more involved, and you've got generations that are a little bit more sensitive to things. Well, you'd think that that would continue and we'd be a little more sensitive to things, but if people are becoming more detached, what are this generation of babies? What's going to happen with them? There's going to be, you know, everyone's love map is going to be completely broken because it's linked to their technology and not the people that actually love them.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I believe in the resiliency of humanity. I think we're going to adapt, we're going to grow. But just like any new paradigm shift, there is growth, there is birth pains, there is suffering, there's struggle. We're already seeing the effects of the pandemic and everybody being thrown online simultaneously. It's what maybe we got what we asked for. Everybody wanted to go 100% digital and online. And now we're seeing in so many ways that experiment worked in some ways, but in a lot of ways it was detrimental. I mean, scores are down, emotional intelligence, IQ scores are way down. Our kids are behind. I saw a study that came out recently about the brains of young people aged far ahead of what in any other generation recently. So, these are all things that I think we're going to learn from, we're going to grow from. Again, the brain is plastic. We can easily move to healthy places. It's not permanent necessarily. So I'm hopeful, but we have to acknowledge it first if we're going to change it.
I I think it's all great. I could seriously sit here and talk to you forever because I really feel like since we're both so passionate about mental health, but also have that digital marketing background, it's just not one of those combinations you get a lot. But I
Yeah.
do want to be mindful of your time. Is there anything else that you'd like to go over? I don't have a hard stop, so I want to make sure. I know this
Yeah.
isn't the first book you've been involved in,
Yeah.
so
Well, I have a
um,
book that I wrote a few years ago that's I guess, the yin to the yang. It's called Finally Human, Using Digital Technology to Restore Culture and Better Our World. And in it, I talk about the value of digital media and how to really integrate the human connection. I say it's a yin and yang. It's actually very similar, meaning both of these books, the theme you're going to find is that there's no substitute for human to human interaction. And it's always been the foundation of my marketing online, is how do you find that human connection? And so apart from talking about this stuff that we talked about the past hour, the other thing that I do is I consult with, I strategize, and I work with companies and organizations and startups on how to put together the best digital strategies with the foundation of human connection. I always say I'm data informed, but human driven. I love data, and people talk about data driven agencies, data driven, decisions, data driven
It's going to
marketing.
take everything in me to not steal that from you.
Yeah, I love data, but I'm data informed, but I'm human driven. And so the data has to be interpreted through the human lens. And it's how I've built my career. I'm usually able to look at data and find that missing 1% that most people find that's so important, which is data doesn't tell us anything. It does not answer anything. It only informs the questions that have to come through the human lens, i.e., what are you trying to accomplish? What is the question that you're trying to answer? What is the problem you're trying to solve for the humans on the other side of the screen, and how are they going to engage with and see you? Those are all things that data and digital marketing do, but you have to approach it from that human perspective. So that's my real passion. It's what I do. And yeah, we could talk all day about that as well.
Yeah, it may have to be a whole other segment that we talk
Yeah.
about, because I'm really interested to go more in depth into that, and I won't steal it as my own. I'll quote you, but I am going to turn that
Yeah.
into one of my
Please use
little
it.
social media quotes. I will give you the credit, but I love it, and I'm going to definitely use it. I think having the organizational psychology, I always am like, if I went back to school, I would do that. Oh, I wish I had
Yeah.
done that instead of forensic psychology for my master's. Forensic
Oh, that's
psychology is
funny. It's fun. I've often thought about going back and studying forensic psychology.
yeah, I always, there's that saying, like, children from homes with mental illness learn how to read a room. So
Yeah.
I I always felt like I could read people really well, so I thought
Mhm.
that meant that was the direction that I needed to go in. And it still helps with marketing. It's very interesting, but what are you going to do with it? So,
Well, like you said, it's helpful with marketing. And another saying that I always use is that, good marketers understand behavioral psychology and how to measure it, how to scale it. And that's all marketing really is, right? And so it's funny when I'm in a room and of marketers or business people, and I say, "You have been psychologists all your career." They like smile and shake their head. They're like, "Yeah, pretty much." And so I think any study of psychology in any field is really helpful with marketing for sure.
yeah, I mean, absolutely. Well, I am so grateful that you have joined the podcast. I know that it's new and you don't have anything to compare it to, so there was no way to know what you were in store for. And
Great
I'm
things ahead for you for sure.
absolutely, I can't wait to talk to you again. And I will make sure that everyone has all of the information so we can all get started on reading those books. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Absolutely, Allison. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review.
Also, remember, this show does not contain medical advice that you should follow without speaking to your doctor. If you or someone you know is in crisis, call 911 or go to the nearest emergency room. You can call or text the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988.